Georgiana Lovering was born in 1858 in Connecticut to Joseph Lovering and his wife, Mary. Her earliest years unfolded during a period of national upheaval as the American Civil War began in 1861 and continued through 1865. During the conflict, Joseph Lovering served as a soldier in the 5th New Hampshire Regiment, leaving his young family behind while he endured the hardships of military life. When the war finally ended, he returned home gravely ill. His health never recovered, and he died not long after, leaving Mary a widow and Georgiana without her father at a very young age. Joseph's death placed immediate strain on the small family. With limited means, Mary relied on a modest government pension granted in recognition of her husband's service. She supplemented this income by working whenever possible, though opportunities were scarce. To manage these difficulties, Mary and Georgiana lived in a small cottage located roughly 2 miles from the village of Northwood. The property belonged to Georgiana's grandparents, Deborah and Sylvester Day, who also resided there. The household included several family members. Alongside her grandparents lived Georgiana's 18-year-old cousin, Adeline. Though Georgiana was an only child, the cottage was rarely quiet, and she grew up surrounded by relatives. Within this environment, she attended the local school, where she quickly became a favorite among her teachers. She was described as bright and well-behaved, and she took her studies seriously. Outside the classroom, Georgiana was widely known throughout the community. When she ran errands for her mother, she greeted neighbors with warmth and familiarity, leaving a lasting impression on those she encountered. By 1872, she was regarded as a cheerful and dependable presence, deeply woven into the daily life of the rural village. Her upbringing reflected stability, modest hardship, and strong family ties within Northwood. Franklin Evans came to live with the Day family in June 1872. He was 64 years old and related to Georgiana Lovering as her great-uncle. Evans had been born and raised in New Hampshire, but his life had been marked by constant movement and instability. Over many years, he drifted from place to place, living in towns such as Manchester, Concord, Allenstown, Derry, and Candia. His travels also took him beyond state lines and into Canada, rarely remaining in one location for long. Evans had been married 3 times. His first marriage lasted 20 years and produced 2 children, a son living in Derry, New Hampshire, and a daughter residing in Lawrence, Massachusetts. That marriage ended with his wife's death. His second marriage collapsed when his wife left him, and his third ended the same way. These repeated failures contributed to a reputation for personal instability that followed him throughout his life. Those who encountered Evans often described him as a cunning man with peculiar habits. While his behavior was generally viewed as harmless, he was known for presenting himself under various identities. At different times, he claimed to be a botanist, a magician, and a preacher of the Second Advent. Wherever he traveled, these claims were eventually exposed, and he gained a reputation as a fraud. Despite this, he was articulate, observant, and able to gain the trust of strangers. By the time he arrived in Northwood, Evans appeared to be settling into a quieter routine. He earned small wages working for local farmers and sought to blend into rural life. He found lodging with his sister Deborah Day and her husband Sylvester. The arrangement crowded 6 people into the small cottage, yet initially the household appeared peaceful and orderly. After Franklin Evans settled into the Day household, his relationship with Georgiana gradually changed. At first, his attention toward his great-niece appeared affectionate and familiar, consistent with that of an older relative living under the same roof. Over time, however, his conduct shifted in ways that caused discomfort. Evans began making advances toward Georgiana that were clearly inappropriate for her age and position within the family. These actions alarmed her, and she responded by firmly rejecting him. Her refusal marked a clear boundary and signaled her awareness that his behavior was wrong. Following this rejection, Evans altered his conduct noticeably. He withdrew from Georgiana and began keeping his distance, no longer displaying the same attention he had shown earlier. While his change in demeanor reduced direct interaction between them, it did not ease the underlying tension within the household. His presence remained a constant, and his earlier behavior lingered as an unspoken concern. During this same period, Evans spent increasing amounts of time in the woods near the family home. Beyond the pasture in front of the cottage, he began setting bird snares and checking them regularly. The activity drew Georgiana's curiosity, and she asked if she might accompany him. Evans agreed, and on several occasions, the two walked together into the wooded area where the traps were set. These outings were initially uneventful and seemed routine. As time passed, Georgiana lost interest in the snares and stopped accompanying Evans into the woods. She no longer expressed curiosity about the traps and returned to her usual routines closer to home and school. The woods, however, remained a familiar place connected to Evans's habits. This pattern of withdrawal and routine activity established the setting and uneasy circumstances that would later become central to the events surrounding Georgiana's disappearance. On the evening of Thursday, October 24, 1872, Franklin Evans informed Georgiana that he intended to leave early for work the following morning. Before retiring for the night, he asked her if she would check the bird snares in the woods before going to school. Georgiana hesitated when he made the request. She was familiar with the area where the traps were set and did not feel comfortable going there alone. Evans persisted, and after some persuasion, she reluctantly agreed to carry out the task. Friday morning dawned bright and clear. Evans left the house at approximately 8 o'clock, setting out as though for his usual day's work. Georgiana remained behind to eat breakfast with her family. During the meal, her grandmother noticed that the girl seemed unusually serious and subdued. Concerned by the change in her demeanor, she asked Georgiana what was troubling her. Georgiana replied honestly, explaining that although she had promised to check the bird snares, she disliked going into the woods by herself. She described the place as rough and lonely, and said it made her uneasy when she was alone there. Despite her fears, Georgiana did not refuse outright. After finishing breakfast, she prepared to leave. She kissed her mother and her grandmother goodbye, then crossed the road in front of the house and started toward the pasture that led to the wooded area beyond. Her departure was calm and unremarkable, and nothing about her appearance suggested distress or urgency. This moment marked the last confirmed sighting of Georgiana Lovering. She was expected to return shortly, as she had done on previous occasions when running errands or briefly accompanying Evans. Instead, her walk toward the woods became the final known point in her routine morning. The ordinary nature of her departure, combined with her earlier expression of fear, underscored the quiet tension surrounding her decision to go, setting the stage for the concern that would soon follow. When Georgiana failed to return home within the usual 30 to 45 minutes, her mother, Mary Lovering, began to feel uneasy. At first, she attempted to reassure herself that there was no immediate danger, believing the girl may have been delayed or taken a slightly longer path. As more time passed, however, that uncertainty grew into fear. By mid-morning, the continued absence of her daughter caused Mary's concern to turn into panic. Georgiana's grandfather, Sylvester Day, decided to begin searching for her. He set out along the familiar route leading from the house toward the pasture and into the woods, calling her name as he walked. He expected that at any moment she would emerge from behind the trees, unharmed and unaware of the worry she had caused. Instead, the paths remained silent. Sylvester explored several routes, checking places where Georgiana might have strayed, but found no trace of her. When he returned home without success, neighbors were alerted, and a search party quickly formed. Men from the surrounding area joined together and entered the woods, spreading out along the paths and undergrowth. As the search continued, a sense of dread began to take hold. About half a mile from the house, one of the searchers discovered a broken comb lying on the ground. It was immediately recognized as belonging to Georgiana. Closer inspection revealed strands of her hair still clinging to it. Not far from where the comb was found, a strong piece of string was discovered discarded on the ground. Soon after, Georgiana's apron was located, and nearby the earth appeared disturbed, suggesting there had been a struggle. Further along, searchers observed footprints of different sizes and signs that a body had been dragged across the ground. These discoveries confirmed the growing fear that something terrible had occurred. Word of Georgiana's disappearance spread rapidly through the village, drawing more people into the search. By the afternoon, more than 100 individuals were combing the woods and surrounding areas, driven by urgency and alarm. Yet no further trace of the missing girl was found before nightfall arrived. As the search for Georgiana continued, attention gradually shifted toward Franklin Evans. It soon emerged that he had not gone to work on the morning of her disappearance, despite telling the family that he intended to leave early. Two witnesses later reported seeing Evans near the woods that day, the first at approximately 8 o'clock in the morning and the second around 9:30. Both encounters placed him close to the area where Georgiana had last been seen heading alone. Another witness recalled seeing Evans near the village at about noon, noting that he stopped to ask for the time. None of those who encountered him observed any visible signs of distress or agitation. Later that afternoon, Evans was seen inside a local store, where the shopkeeper described his manner as calm and ordinary. When he returned home, he spoke with a local man named John Mee, who had come to discuss Mary Lovering's pension. During their conversation, Evans was asked about Georgiana's disappearance. He replied evenly that he had no idea where the girl might be, and offered no further explanation. His composed demeanor, contrasted with the growing panic within the community, began to raise suspicion. As the day progressed and no sign of Georgiana was found, villagers increasingly questioned Evans's account of his movements. Rumors spread quickly, fueled by the evidence discovered in the woods and the knowledge that Evans had been the last person to assign Georgiana an errand in that direction. By the following day, public concern had hardened into collective doubt. Sheriff Henry Drew was informed of the circumstances and the mounting unease. After reviewing the witness statements and the developments in the search, a warrant was issued for Franklin Evans's arrest on the charge of murder. When Sheriff Drew went to serve the warrant, he first questioned Evans directly. Evans denied any involvement in Georgiana's disappearance and declared that he was as innocent as an angel in heaven. Despite these assertions, he did not resist arrest. He was taken into custody and transported to Stratford, marking a decisive shift in the investigation, as official suspicion centered firmly on him. After his arrest, Franklin Evans continued to insist that Georgiana Lovering was still alive. While being transported and held under supervision, he spoke freely and repeatedly denied harming the child. His behavior appeared contradictory. During a meal at a hotel, Evans made a disturbing request, asking a young waitress named Miss Brown if she could put poison in his tea. The request alarmed those who heard it and added to the growing belief that his mental state was unstable, even as he continued to deny guilt. On Sunday, October 27th, a heavy storm swept across the village. Despite the harsh weather, nearly 250 people searched the woods and surrounding land, refusing to abandon hope of finding Georgiana alive. Their efforts yielded nothing. As hours passed, public suspicion deepened, and many began to believe the girl had met a tragic fate. On Tuesday afternoon, Sheriff Henry Drew confronted Evans directly. He offered Evans an opportunity to tell the truth, assuring him that if Georgiana were alive and her location revealed, he would be protected from harm. After hesitating, Evans claimed that the girl was indeed alive. He told a detailed story involving a man named Aaron Webster, whom he said he had met in Stratford. According to Evans, Webster had agreed to take Georgiana into his care. Evans claimed he gave the girl money to buy clothing and escorted her into the woods on the morning she disappeared, where Webster allegedly waited with a suitcase. Evans stated that Georgiana changed clothes and left with the man. Although the account was delivered confidently, Sheriff Drew remained doubtful. Still, he investigated the claim, traveling with Evans to Kingston, Kensington, and Candia. In each town, no one had heard of Aaron Webster. With every failed lead, Evans's story unraveled. Sheriff Drew concluded that the account was fabricated, and any remaining belief that Georgiana was alive vanished, leaving Evans firmly at the center of the crime. After the failure of the Webster story, Sheriff Henry Drew confronted Franklin Evans once more. Speaking calmly and deliberately, he reminded Evans of Georgiana Lovering's innocence and the physical evidence already found in the woods, including the broken comb and discarded apron. Then, with no one else present, Drew asked him directly whether the girl's body lay cold in death. For several seconds, Evans said nothing. His composure collapsed as his face turned pale, and his hands began to tremble. In a quiet voice, he admitted that he had done wrong. Sheriff Drew immediately instructed him to lead the way and show where Georgiana was hidden. Evans agreed, but asked for assurance of protection, expressing fear of being attacked by an enraged crowd. Drew confirmed that he would be safeguarded. Preparations were made at once. Near midnight, the sheriff and his prisoner traveled by horse-drawn carriage to the edge of the woods. Drew handed Evans a lantern and ordered him forward. They passed the locations where the apron and comb had been found, and crossed the fence into difficult terrain, filled with fallen trees, stones, and wet grass. The journey was slow and exhausting, and both men stumbled repeatedly. At one point, Evans claimed he had lost his way and suggested returning to the fence. They retraced their steps and tried again. Eventually, they reached a bleak hollow, dominated by an uprooted tree with a mound of exposed earth. Evans stopped, knelt, and brushed away leaves. Beneath them lay the body of Georgiana Lovering. Without speaking, Sheriff Drew placed handcuffs on Evans. Other men were summoned, and at first light the body was carefully recovered. Georgiana's face appeared calm, but bruises on her neck showed clear evidence of strangulation. Her dress was torn, muddied, and pulled upward, consistent with her being dragged. The body was carried back to the village, where news spread quickly. Later that afternoon, an official inquest was convened to examine the circumstances of her death. The inquest into Georgiana Lovering's death convened later on the afternoon her body was returned to the village. Medical examination revealed that she had been strangled, with clear finger marks visible on her neck. Further testimony established that her body had been mutilated, and that some of her organs had been buried separately in another part of the woods. These findings confirmed that the crime was deliberate and violent, dispelling any remaining uncertainty about the manner of her death. Witnesses testified regarding Franklin Evans's presence in the household since June 1872, and stated that his relations with the family had generally appeared peaceful. He was described as 64 years old, of average height, slim build, and slightly stooped, with long gray hair, a full gray beard, and a thin face. Observers noted that his appearance was usually neat, and that he spoke smoothly, presenting a pious and attentive manner that some interpreted as deceptive. Following the inquest, Evans was formally committed to custody to await trial. Over the next several months, the case drew intense public attention. Newspapers reported extensively on each development, and speculation spread well beyond the local community. The trial began on February 3, 1873, presided over by Justices Doe and Ladd. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse, and the proceedings quickly became a media sensation due to the shocking nature of the crime. The trial itself was brief, lasting only 2 days. Evans had already confessed to Sheriff Drew and led authorities to the body. During the proceedings, he attempted to take his own life in his cell, but was prevented by a guard. His defense argued that he was insane and incapable of understanding his actions, while the prosecution presented expert testimony asserting that Evans was fully aware of his conduct. After deliberating for just 30 minutes, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. Following his conviction, Franklin Evans remained in prison while authorities investigated his possible involvement in other unsolved crimes. He was questioned about the 1862 murder of Laura Libby, denying any knowledge of her or her family, despite witness testimony placing him in contact with them through church and social visits. Similarly, he was questioned about the 1865 murders of Isabella and John Joyce, giving only vague responses that suggested potential involvement without providing a direct confession. In the months leading up to his execution, Evans exhibited vivid dreams and visions, which newspapers speculated were connected to his past misdeeds. Despite these reports, he maintained a generally calm demeanor and expressed regret only for not fully dedicating himself to preaching his faith. Evans also prepared a written confession to be read publicly before his death. In it, he admitted to murdering Georgiana Lovering and a 5-year-old child in Derry, New Hampshire, in 1850, claiming the latter had been taken for surgical purposes before he strangled her. He admitted to acts of theft and fraud but denied responsibility for any other murders, and he requested that his body be delivered to Dartmouth College's medical division for dissection, with the proceeds going to his son. On February 18, 1874, Evans read his confession aloud and said farewell to his children before being hanged. His body was subsequently delivered to Dartmouth, where Dr. A.H. Crosby performed the dissection as Evans had requested. Newspapers across the region printed his confession in full, ensuring that the details of his crimes and final admission reached a wide audience. The case left a lasting impact on the local community and on historical accounts of Victorian-era true crime, highlighting both the brutality of the murders and the extensive investigative efforts that ultimately brought Franklin Evans to justice.